In the heart of ancient Wales, where the air carries the scent of moss and moonlight, there lies a place untouched by time. The wind sighs through the green-veined hills, and rivers murmur secrets older than men. It is a land where stones remember, where the sky shifts like a living soul, and where magic does not hide, but breathes, hums, blossoms. Beneath the emerald canopy of oak and ash, something stirs, not beast, nor god, nor woman, yet not unlike any of them. She begins as pollen caught on a breeze, as the hush between birdsong and thunder. Her story is a whisper in the roots, a petal in the stream. She is made of wildflowers, and yet she is not wild. Her name is Blodeuwedd. She was never born. She was conjured, woven into existence by the wills of two men, Maith and Gwydion, sorcerers of unmatched power, shaped her not from womb or pain, but from blooms, oak flower for strength, meadowsweet for grace, broom for brightness. Petals pressed together like soft incantations, flesh formed by force and desire, and breath given not by love, but by command. She opened her eyes in a world already deciding what she was. The trees bowed low when she stepped among them. The sun briefly forgot to burn. For she was not only beautiful, she was ideal, crafted to be companion and comfort, bride and balm to a man cursed by fate to have no human wife. Her existence was an answer to a loophole, a remedy wrapped in petals. She was shaped for obedience, for perfection, for belonging to another. But flowers do not ask to bloom. They reach toward sun or shadow as they will. And so, from the very beginning, something stirred in her that neither moth nor Gwydion could see. A slow, soft resistance, a dream of a dream. It started with sensation, the silk of water against her ankles, the hum of bees beneath her breast, and the aching beauty of a falcon in flight. The world touched her, and she began to feel not only what she was, but what she was not. Blodeuwedd, flower face, a name not of her choosing, a body not of her choosing, a role written before her first breath. She was made to love, but never asked what she loved. She was made to serve, but her soul stirred with a question. Can something made for another ever truly be its own?
They say she smiled gently, that she moved like summer rain, soft, inevitable, that her gaze was warm but empty, like a painting of the sun. But they did not see what bloomed behind her eyes, not yet. The man she was made for, Lu La Eufes, was noble, bound by fate and the bitterness of a spell. No woman born of earth could love him, so he was given one born of flowers. He was not cruel, he was gentle. Perhaps he even tried to love her. But love cannot grow in soil that is not chosen. Blodeuwedd walked among the wild meadows, her feet bare, her breath tasting of honey and green leaves. She listened to the wind and wondered why it moved where it willed, while she could not. She watched the stars rise above her and wondered if they envied her beauty or pitied her silence. The owl sang in the distance, and its cry made her shiver, not from fear, but from recognition. For there are two kinds of silence, the silence of peace and the silence of containment. Hers was the second, a hush pressed down like velvet and chains. She smiled with lips she did not choose. She kissed with a mouth she did not own. And yet the forest whispered. It whispered of choices, of hunger, of the ache of freedom, of the secret songs sung only between shadow and moonlight. In the lore that remains, her story is often brief. A woman created, a betrayal enacted, a punishment sealed. But that is not the whole myth. That is only the version told by those who fear what cannot be controlled. This is another version, a deeper one told not from the tower of the wizard nor the sorrow of the cuckolded man, but from within the skin of the woman made of flowers, from within her yearning. She was not evil, she was not wicked, she was awake. And what awakens cannot be unawakened. The soil that fed her was thick with magic, yes, but also with seeds of disobedience. A dandelion does not ask permission before scattering. A vine does not wait for approval before climbing toward the sun. Why then should a woman shaped of wild blossoms not begin to dream of wildness?
Was it betrayal to want more? Was it wicked to long for the sound of her own name, spoken in desire, not design? Or was it simply nature unfolding in the only way it knew? There was a man in time, a stranger with eyes like smoke and hands that did not command but touched as if in prayer. His presence was a question. What if love could be chosen? What if the body could be more than a gift for another's need? And so her story, already written in ink and decree, began to unwrite itself, slowly, sensually, like dew sliding from a petal's edge, falling not because it must, but because it longs to fall. She would choose, she would want, she would bloom into something more than myth. This is not a tale of betrayal. This is a tale of awakening, of a woman made of flowers who dared to feel more than fragrance, of a soul that found hunger in a kiss and truth in defiance, and of what the world does to such a woman. Let the wind carry this story through the dark branches. Let the blossoms hear it. Let the owl remember. Let us begin. She began without memory. Blodeuwedd did not arrive into the world through pain or time. She emerged in an instant of sorcery, fully formed, as if the meadow itself had dreamed her into flesh. Yet, even without a past, she carried the weight of expectation in her bones. She knew, somehow, that her beauty was not her own, that the warmth of her skin, the softness of her breath, the shape of her hips, and the curve of her smile had all been chosen for her. But who was she? At first she was sensation, the warmth of sun on bare shoulders, the sweetness of crushed petals between her fingers, the tingle of grass brushing her thighs as she walked barefoot through the hills. Everything was new. She was new. And like all new things, she reached, hungrily, for the world. She watched insects with reverence. She tilted her head at the cries of distant birds. She placed her hands on trees not for support, but to feel their patience. Curiosity grew like ivy inside her, creeping, persistent, restless. And within that curiosity, something else bloomed. A question. Not, what am I? But, who am I when no one is watching?
They called her Blodeuwedd, flower face. But a face is only what others see. Beneath the petals a soul stirred, neither docile nor wild, but waiting. He watched her with calm eyes and a quiet, practiced tenderness. Llao Githes was not a man easily read. His strength was not loud, his pain never spoken. There was a silence about him, like standing beside a well and never knowing how deep the water goes. He was handsome in a restrained way, fair of face, solemn of gaze, with a body made lean by war and hardship. He too was shaped by magic, not in body, but in fate. No woman born of mortal womb could love him. A curse had decreed it. So, when Blodeuwedd was given to him, he accepted her as one accepts a finely woven garment or a gifted hound, with gratitude, perhaps, affection, but not passion. He loved her as one loves a solution, not as one loves a storm or a song. He was kind, yes. He taught her the names of stars and how to string a bow. He walked beside her in the meadows and whispered gentle truths in the dusk. But he never asked who she wanted to be.
And perhaps that was his greatest blindness. Lu understood honor and law and the weight of legacy, but he did not understand longing. He had never tasted rebellion on another's tongue. He had never looked into a woman's eyes and seen them truly burning. He loved her in his own distant, dutiful way, but he never saw her, not the way she craved to be seen. Above them both stood the architects, Math and Gwydion, two men of power, old as river stones, steeped in spells and pride. They played with fate as children play with clay. They carved destinies as if the world were a board game and lives its pawns. Their hands were stained not with blood, but with hubris, the quiet violence of those who believe creation entitles them to control. Math the elder, cold and unbending. His words were law, carved into air like runes. He saw Blodeuwedd not as a person, but as a resolution, an elegant solution to an unnatural curse. He gave her beauty so she would not rebel. And Gwydion, younger but no less dangerous. He smiled more, But behind his mirth was calculation. He took pleasure in the cleverness of it all, the loophole, the magic, the bloom of a woman beneath his spell. He watched her not as a father or friend, but as an artist watches his sculpture, pleased, possessive, blind to her pulse. To them she was a creation. To her, they were gods who forgot their hands made something that could feel. Their magic gave her breath, but it did not give her will. That came later, slowly, painfully, beautifully. And then Gronu Peber. He did not arrive with thunder. He came like a shadow at twilight, unnoticed at first, then all-consuming. A lord from another realm visiting Lu's lands under the guise of peace, of trade, of diplomacy. But the truth walked differently. He rode with elegance. His voice was like smoke, low, curling, impossible to hold. He spoke not of duties, but of dreams, not of honor, but of hunger. Blue-Daled saw him and felt a thrum beneath her ribs like a bird remembering its wings. He looked at her, truly looked, and what he saw was not obedience or design. He saw the restless tilt of her head, the question behind her smile, the ache blooming in her gaze. And she saw him too, not just the man, but the possibility he carried.
With Leu, her world was safe, structured, stagnant. With Gronu, it became alive, dangerous, divine. He was not kind, not in the way Leu was. He did not offer comfort. He offered choice, and choice to Blodaywood tasted like honey and hemlock. He did not press her. He let her come to him. He watched her, not as an object to be held, but as a flame to be respected or worshipped. His presence was a mirror she'd never seen before, reflecting the parts of herself she had only felt in secret. When he touched her, it was not possession. It was revelation. Each of them pulled at her soul in different ways. Leu, with his quiet devotion, bound her to the life she was made for, but not the one she wanted. Moth and Gwydion, with their magic and arrogance, saw her only as the sum of their craft. Gronu, with his desire and mystery, awakened in her a truth that had no name, but burned like starlight in her chest. They each danced around the same axis: freedom, love, fate. But Blodaywood stood at the center. She who had never been asked. She who had never chosen. She who now felt a storm rising in her veins. They say flowers are delicate, that they bend to the wind and perish in frost. But some flowers, night blooming, bone deep, hold poison beneath their petals. Some flowers do not bloom to please, they bloom to survive. And Blodaywood was no longer content to be beautiful. She wanted to be real.
It began as a silence that pulled at her,
delicate as a thread beneath the skin. Blighter-Red would walk the forest trails alone, skirts brushing against foxglove and fern, the air thick with midsummer sweetness. Every leaf seemed to quiver with a secret, every path curved as if beckoning. Her feet carried her, but her thoughts wandered further, chasing something just out of reach. She was adored. She was praised. She was tended to as one tends a garden, admired, possessed, enclosed. Yet within her something stirred, not anger, not even sadness, something softer, wilder, hunger. It was not for food or power or even love as she had been taught to understand it. It was for something nameless, to be felt not as creation but as being, to be touched without intention, to speak without fear of redefining someone's fantasy, to want and to be wanted, not as a role but as herself, whole and unformed. She began to pull away from Luer, not cruelly, but gradually. Her smiles became more distant, her laughter rarer. She kissed him with lips that remembered how to mimic desire, but now knew the difference. And her eyes drifted toward the woods, because the silence was no longer empty. It was waiting. She first met Granu Pebber in full daylight. There were others around, men, servants, horses shifting impatiently, but she felt it like a bell struck deep in the marrow. This one sees me. He bowed, spoke her name, and the syllables unfurled from his mouth like smoke. Not reverent, not possessive, curious. He held her gaze a moment longer than courtesy allowed. She didn't look away. Later that evening, she touched her lips and couldn't remember if he'd kissed her hand or not. After that, she found herself near him often, by chance at first, or so she told herself. The stables, the garden's edge, the shadow of the orchard at dusk. Every meeting was wrapped in tension, a waiting that thickened the air between them, made her fingers tremble, made her breath turn shallow. They barely spoke at first, but eyes are fluent in languages older than speech. He watched her as one watches fire, beautiful, yes, but also dangerous. And she watched him as one watches the sky before the storm breaks. She did not know what she was to him. She only knew that when he looked at her, she felt real. Not perfect, not obedient, just there, woman, wanting. One night the moon spilled silver over the trees, and Blue-Dwade followed the path beyond the garden, barefoot and breathless. She found him there, leaning against an ash tree, arms crossed, as though he'd been waiting. "You walk like the forest is your confessor," he said, "and you wait like it has told me my sins." He smiled, and something in her softened and sharpened. She stepped closer. They did not touch. Not yet. Instead, she spoke. For the first time, truly, she told him things she could not say in the daylight, about the weight of beauty, about the loneliness of being made, not born, about the fear that her soul was only an echo of someone else's will. He listened. He did not offer solutions. He did not try to fix her sadness or name her needs. He listened like a man who knew the shape of longing, who had worn it like a second skin. And when he reached out to brush her hair from her face, it was not command, it was permission. Their affair unfolded slowly, sensually, like honey melting in the heat. They met in the hush of twilight and the damp breath of dawn. Sometimes he brought her wild strawberries. Sometimes she brought him silences so intimate they made his hands tremble. They did not speak of love, not yet. The word felt too sharp, too defined. What they shared was softer, heavier, filled with the ache of what had never been allowed to bloom. He kissed her like prayer. She touched him like discovery. Their bodies remembered things they had never known. The heat between them was not the burn of lust, but the slow, sacred fire of recognition, as if each breath they shared wrote a new myth on their skin. Still, she hesitated, not from guilt, that faded quickly, but from confusion, because her body had been designed to please another, her heart conditioned to fold neatly into duty. Her whole life, brief as it was, had been shaped by outside hands. Could this wanting be hers? Or was she just betraying one command for another? She asked him once, half in tears, half in fury, "If I was made to love, do I get to choose who?" He answered not with words, but with his mouth at her throat and his hands at her hips, and the press of his chest against hers in the damp moss of the forest floor. And in that moment, she chose. But love, when forbidden, ripens quickly into danger. Liu was not cruel, but he was still there, still real, still bound to her by magic and law. Blow de Wed did not hate him, but nor did she want him. And in her newfound clarity, pity began to feel like prison. She could not live in two skins. And Gron whispered promises, not of forever, but of escape, of freedom. It was she who asked the question, how can he die? Gronwood did not flinch. He said nothing, but she saw the answer bloom in his eyes. He had wondered too. And so began their dark dance, not of cruelty, but of necessity. She did not want blood. She wanted breath. She wanted space. She wanted to be unmade so that she could become real on her own terms. Leeuwin, bound by layers of spells, could only be killed in one specific, nearly impossible way. Naked, standing on the edge of a river, one foot on a goat, one on a bath, struck by a spear made under moonlight only when men were fasting. It was absurd, arcane, safe, until it wasn't.
because she asked, and he answered, trusting her completely, and she held his trust like silk between her fingers and slowly tore it. And yet, even now, even in the shadow of murder, doubt coiled inside her. Was she wicked? Or was this what freedom tasted like, bitter at first, then intoxicating? Was she betraying him? Or was she saving herself? Was this sin? Or was this the first true act of selfhood? The myth tells us what she did, but it does not tell us what she felt. Not the way her heart pounded before she kissed Gronawood again, knowing it might be the last kiss before blood. Not the way her hands trembled when she gave the secret. Not the way she knelt in the grass after, alone, whispering her own name into the dark just to hear it on her own lips. Bloodawade. Not bride, not creation, not flower, just Bloodawade. A woman on the edge of ruin. And the edge, as it turns out, was only the beginning.
She lit the chamber with soft lamplight. No spells, no incantations, just flame, oil, and time. The air smelled of crushed lavender, of worn stone and sweat soaked into linen. It was a room meant for intimacy, not the roaring kind, but the kind that breathes slowly between silences. A room that suggested surrender, not war. Bloodawed waited there, bare beneath a robe of thin white cloth, hair unbound, brushed until it shimmered like late sun on still water. Not seduction, invitation. And beneath that invitation, a purpose, not of the body, but of the future. Lay entered as he always did, quietly, with a reverent caution, as though the threshold of his own chamber still belonged to someone else. He carried the stiffness of a man born into rituals he never questioned, yet his eyes softened the moment they found her, the curl of her hair, the shape of her waiting, the hush of her stillness. He smiled. It was shy, uncertain. She returned it, hers fuller, more deliberate. "What is this?" he asked. She reached out, her fingers grazing his hand. They curled around his, slowly. "A night for you and for me, no questions." He let her undress him. Tunic, belt, underclothes. Each layer slipped from his frame like fallen leaves, soundless and inevitable. She did not rush, she did not tremble. Her hands were gentle, but her mind was sharp, listening to each breath, each flicker of his gaze, each reaction. He did not resist. When she stepped close, her robe fell open just slightly, enough for skin to meet skin, for warmth to pass between them. She pressed her lips to his shoulder, lightly. He shivered. She kissed him again, this time the curve of his neck. He sighed, and it felt like wind leaving a mountain. They lay together, not in hunger, but in hush, the weight of him against her, the hush of bodies pressed heart to heart. She guided him with the rhythm of her breath, and he followed her lead without question. Each touch was careful, devoted, each kiss slow. He loved her that night, in the only way he knew how. Earnestly, sweetly, without suspicion.
and she gave him everything but her truth. Later, after the final shutters of pleasure faded, after his head fell to her breast and his fingers softened in her hair, she asked, so gently it could have been mistaken for a sigh, "Is there truly no way you could be harmed?" He hesitated, eyes still half closed. "There is," he murmured, "but it is nothing to worry about. The conditions cannot be met." She kept her breathing steady, slow. "Tell me," she said, tracing lazy circles along his spine. And so he told her. Naked, standing on the edge of a river, one foot on the back of a goat, the other on the rim of a cauldron beneath a thatched canopy. Only then, struck by a spear forged for a year, during a fast, could he die. She kissed his brow. "Strange," she whispered, "but beautiful." "Absurd," he said with a small laugh, "which is why I never feared it." She said nothing more. He drifted to sleep with her fingers at his temple, her warmth wrapped around him like mist. She stayed still beside him, watching the rhythm of his chest rise and fall. Her own body trembled, not from fear, but from weight. Because he had trusted her, and she had taken it, folded it between her fingers like silk, and already begun to tear. When he finally slept, she slipped from the bed and moved to the window. The night was warm, damp with midsummer softness. The trees whispered. The moon watched. She pressed her forehead to the cool stone and thought of Gron. The next day, her hands smelled of ash. The spear had already been made, its shaft smooth, its tip dark and honed to silence. It had been hardened with moonlight and waiting. Gron met her in the woods, voice low, eyes taut with nerves and longing. "Are you sure?" he asked. No, she wasn't, but she nodded.
The preparations were made, the goat brought, the bath prepared, the canopy assembled in its absurd geometry. Lou arrived with puzzled amusement. "This is a strange request," he said. "I dreamed of it," Bloduid replied. "A dream of you in balance, in purity, 1 foot on life, 1 foot on ritual." He smiled and stripped to the waist. "If it pleases you." She dressed simply that day. No jewels, no flowers, only linen against her skin. She stood at the edge of the clearing, heart knotted, breath shallow, hands hidden in her sleeves. Gron was already in place, spear poised behind the thickets. Lou stood on the goat, then the cauldron. The wind picked up, the canopy shifted. She thought he looked like a prince carved from light, unaware, exposed. Gron stepped from the trees. The spear flew. Time cracked. It struck Lou, not in flesh, but in something deeper. His body convulsed, then twisted, and before her eyes he changed, feathers bursting from skin, wings unfurling in a storm of gold and red. He did not cry out. He did not fall. He rose, an eagle, wounded, majestic, blood trailing from his side in long red ribbons, his cry tearing across the sky. Bloduid fell to her knees, not in grief,
not in relief, in awe, because he had not died, he had become. The sky swallowed him. Gron cursed under his breath. That wasn't supposed to happen.
She did not answer. He turned to her. We must leave. She looked past him, past the trees, toward the sky. No, she said. Do you want to die for him now? I want to know what I am without him, she replied, voice brittle with something raw and newly born. At the house, the chambers were empty, the sheets cold, the hearth silent, the scent of him already fading. She did not cry. She touched the walls with the same reverence she once gave his body, as if saying goodbye, or perhaps asking forgiveness. But no voice answered. At night she walked the gardens alone. The roses were blooming, the owls called. She tilted her head to the sound, feeling the wind wrap around her bare arms. She pressed a hand to her chest. Something inside her had changed too. She had not only taken his secret, she had become her own. And still she waited. He vanished into sky, a storm of feathers bleeding gold and crimson. The spear had pierced more than flesh. It had ruptured fate. Lu, man of prophecy, man of ritual, soared beyond them all, wounded but unbroken. And though he screamed, it was not agony that echoed from his beak. It was transformation. The wind carried his cry across the hills, through forests older than memory, through valleys that had once known his name in prayer. Somewhere in the mountains he found rest, perched high, bleeding quietly into moss and mist, wings drooping, eyes still human behind the eagle's mask. He waited, not for vengeance, but for returning. Gron did not sleep that night. His hands shook. His mouth tasted of metal. He had expected blood. He had expected silence. Instead, he had seen divinity tear through the sky like a judgment he could not name. "We must run," he told Blodeuwedd. She looked at him, not afraid, not angry, just hollow, as if a fire once lit inside her had gone out, leaving only ash and heatless smoke. She said, "There is nowhere to run." He tried to take her hand. She did not pull away, but she did not respond either. Her skin was cold, her gaze unreadable. "Come with me," he urged, "before Gwydion finds us." Blodeuwedd turned her face toward the forest, where the scent of owl feathers lingered in the damp air. "I think," she said, "he already has." And she was right. Gwydion had been hunting since the sun first rose. His magic was not loud. It moved like roots beneath the earth, like breath behind the ear. When he stepped into their chamber at dusk, the door did not creak. His footsteps made no sound.
Gronyu reached for his blade. He never touched it. A word, one word, left Gwydion's lips, and Gronyu fell to his knees, not struck, not thrown, but undone, as if the bones had been whispered out of him. He begged. There were no grand speeches, no accusations, no fury, only silence. the silence of a god who had created and now come to collect. Gwydion raised a spear, not forged in secret, but carved openly from a branch of yew black with age. He offered Gronw a choice: to take Lie's place, to stand in the same position, to bear the justice he had planned for another. Gronw agreed. But when the moment came, when the spear soared toward him like fate itself, he lifted a slab of stone to shield his chest. It was split in two. The spear tore through stone, through flesh, through heart. He died with no glory, only inevitability. Blaudelwed watched from the edge of the clearing, wrapped in silence. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from recognition. She had loved a man who had killed without understanding the cost, and now he was gone. Gwydion turned to her. He did not raise his hand, he did not shout. His voice, when it came, was soft, like snowfall. He said, "You were never meant to choose, and yet you did." She lifted her chin. "Would you have had me remain your puppet?" He said nothing. "I am not your creation. I never was." He walked toward her, slowly, measured. He said, "There are punishments for those who betray their purpose." She laughed, bitter and quiet. "Then I was born into punishment. My very birth was betrayal of the wild I came from. You will no longer walk among the blossoms." She nodded. "Good, they always whispered too much. You will not sleep beside men again." Her breath caught, not from pain, but from memory. "I never truly did." "You will fly by night. You will eat the dead. You will be feared."
She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they were darker than before. So be it. The spell was not loud. It did not crackle or spark. It rustled like wings in the rafters, like leaves in a windless wood. She felt it in her spine first, then in her shoulders, as if a burden had shifted shape. Her skin prickled, softened, became feather. Her arms pulled inward, her breath shortened. Pain, but not suffering. It was a return. She gasped once, sharp, involuntary, and then it was done. Blodeuwedd was gone. In her place, an owl stood upon the moss-covered stone, silent and still, its eyes like deep wells under the moonlight. No cry, no movement, just watching. She took to the air moments later, without hesitation, without farewell. Above the trees, the world opened. Cold wind kissed her feathers, stars whispered names she had never known. She flew not as a punishment, but as truth. And as she soared, something within her began to sing, not with voice, but with sensation. She felt her body no longer made of soft skin, shaped by another's will, but of wings, eyes, hunger, freedom. She was not lesser, she was wilder. She hunted alone that night, not for blood, for silence. She found it among the branches of a tall birch, where the world fell away and the moon watched with knowing light. She perched there, breathing slowly, listening to the heartbeats of mice, the murmur of leaves, the hush of her own soul.
In the mountains, Leu stirred. He too was changing, his feathers slowly shedding, his wound healing, the man returning beneath the eagle's shape. Not whole, not untouched, but awake in ways he had never been. He did not hate her. He thought of her as he sat at the edge of a cliff, wind biting his bare skin. He remembered the way she had kissed him that last night, not coldly, not cruelly, but carefully, as if she knew what she would become and wanted to savor the last moment of flesh. He wept, but not for vengeance. He wept for what they had both lost, and what they had both found. The world, once rigid with laws and curses, now felt uncertain, fluid. The lines between justice and fate had blurred, and in that blurring something sacred had emerged. Blue-Duerred had betrayed him, yes, but she had also awakened him. She had become what he never could, unbound. And somewhere in the forest she watched, quiet and hidden, feathered and fierce, not wife, not maiden, something older, something free. Freedom is a fragile, trembling thing, more delicate than the petals from which Blodeuwedd was born, yet heavier than the ancient stones beneath her silent flight. It is a paradox carved into the heart of every soul that ever dared to break the chains forged by others. For Blodeuwedd, freedom was not a gift bestowed. It was a wound opened, a price paid in quiet sorrow and roaring desire. She was made a beautiful tapestry woven by the hands of gods, a creature of blossoms and enchantments, destined to serve a fate not her own. Yet in the depths of her being, beyond the fragile petals and artful creation, there flickered a flame, a restless spark that would not be doused. What does it mean to be alive, to breathe, to move, to love? Was Blodeuwedd ever truly alive before she chose to defy the gods who fashioned her? Or was she simply a delicate shadow cast by their will, a doll animated by magic but lacking a soul? These questions haunt the quiet corners of the myth, like whispers in a forest where no one dares to tread. Her existence began in obedience, in silence, shaped to be the perfect bride for Leu, beautiful, pliant, and bound. But beneath the surface of her perfection stirred curiosity, yearning, and a thirst for more than the scripted life laid out before her.
It was a yearning that no magic could satisfy, a hunger no flower could quench. And when Gronwa appeared, mysterious, magnetic, alive, her heart stirred in ways she had never known, awakening something wild and untamed. In their secret meetings beneath the moon's silver gaze, Blodeuwedd tasted freedom for the first time, not the freedom of flight or power, but the freedom of choice, a dangerous, intoxicating freedom that came with the cost of betrayal and the risk of ruin. Was she betraying Leu, or was she simply claiming a birthright denied to her from the moment of her creation? Love and betrayal blurred into one another. A tightrope walked on trembling feet. Her desire was not merely for Gronwa's body, but for what he represented, a glimpse of a life unshackled, a self not dictated by curses or gods. The sensual brush of his hand against bark, the stolen glances, the heated breaths mingling in the cool night air. Each moment was a rebellion, each touch a declaration of independence.
Yet the price was swift and unforgiving. Lieu's near death shattered their fragile world, turning love into a weapon and desire into sorrow. When the gods exacted their justice, they did not merely punish, they transformed. Blodeuwedd's punishment was not death, it was metamorphosis, a return to an elemental truth deeper than flesh and flower. She became the owl. Silent feathers cloaked in night, eyes deep and knowing, wings that moved through darkness without sound. Not a creature of punishment, but a creature of mystery and ancient power. The owl is no mere beast. It is a symbol of wisdom, of watchfulness, of a presence that lingers at the edges of human understanding. Blodeuwedd's transformation was not a fall, but a rise into a form that honored the complexity of her existence. In this new shape, she embodies the paradox of womanhood shaped by others, both captive and free, both shadow and light. She is no longer the fragile flower born of magic, but a fierce spirit unbound by mortal laws. The world may see her as a harbinger of sorrow, a silent witness to betrayal, but in truth, she is a guardian of the wild, a keeper of secrets no one else dares to hold. Her flight through the dark forests is a meditation on solitude and strength. Alone but never lonely, she moves with grace through the night, watching over the world with eyes that have seen both love and loss. The moonlight that kisses her feathers is both a balm and a reminder of what was taken and what was gained. And what of Lieu? His survival as an eagle is no less profound. Wounded yet soaring, he carries the weight of pain and rebirth, a living symbol of transformation through suffering. His tears are not tears of hatred, but of mourning, for the love lost, for the future forever altered. He understands that Blodeuwedd's defiance was a necessary breaking of chains, that in her rebellion lies a truth he could never fully grasp until it was too late. The story of Blodeuwedd is a story of desire's power to transform, of the price of freedom paid in silence and sorrow. It challenges the notion of victim and villain, reminding us that the lines between right and wrong, love and betrayal, are often blurred in the shadows of the heart. She is neither punished nor condemned. She is changed, remade into something ancient and eternal. Her wings beat against the night not as a curse, but as a song, a mournful, sensual hymn to a life reclaimed. The owl's cry is a call to those who feel trapped by the expectations of others, a whispered promise, but even those born from another's hand can find their own voice, their own form, their own flight. In the depths of myth, Blodeuwedd remains a figure of quiet defiance, a woman who dared to want more, who dared to live on her own terms, even when those terms meant exile and silence. Her story lingers in the twilight, between day and night, between creation and destruction, between love's embrace and freedom's flight. To hear her call is to remember the cost of breaking free, the weight of desire carried alone, and the fierce beauty of a soul that will not be caged. She is the night's secret, the soft shadow gliding past sleeping villages, the watcher of dreams and the keeper of longing. And in her silent flight we find a truth that echoes far beyond the myth, that to live is to become, to change, to soar, and above all, to be free, no matter the cost.